An emotional affair is simply an affair that excludes physical intimacy, but it includes emotional intimacy. According to Shirley Glass, 82% of affairs happen with someone who is first just a friend. And this would include anyone you know and may see in person during the work or recreation, as well as virtual friends through social media. This could also include a friend that you text with, that you email, tweet, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, any of the number of new social media that are out there. And while there's no in-person physical intimacy, emotional affairs are carried on in secret usually. So I'm going to mention 9 ways or 9 signs that you or your spouse may be developing an emotional affair, and in hopes that you'll be able to avoid that, or at least stop that pattern. Now keep in mind, the way I'm going to do this today is I'm going to talk about it in a reverse order about what not to do, as if you are having that affair or as if you want it, because sometimes talking about it in reverse can be really helpful. And if you can identify with these signs, even just one of them, you may be developing or walking into some dangerous territory. So the first one I want to talk about is intimacy avoidance. And intimacy, you know, is the willingness to know your partner as well as a willingness to be known. With intimacy avoidance, you begin to avoid speaking up and potentially create conflict in your relationship. You'll instead settle for closeness and avoid the risk of rejection by your partner. Intimacy avoidance allows you to silence the conversation that you ought to be having, which brought you together in the first place, and opens up the door for new possibility of an illicit opportunity. Avoiding rejection can successfully foil your partner's attempts to know you, and it will create a new desire for a connection with your affair partner. The second is seeking approval. The void created by fearing rejection and settling for false intimacy creates a craving for the approval of others. And it won't be long until you discover someone who appears to listen well and who's fascinated by the words you speak. Pursuing opportunities to acquire their validation only helps to fuel the flame for more and more and more. Third, and this is a really common one, is pimping tenderness. And my question is, do you show interest in the life of someone for the cause of them being drawn back to you? And we can do that with anyone. I hear stories about it happening with a server or a cashier at a grocery store, coworkers, even adults, other adults at our kids' sporting events. Listening and showing concern and interest, giving compliments, dressing nicely, flirting, helping, encouraging, even picking lint off of their clothes. These aren't necessarily bad, but you do have to ask yourself, what's your motivation? And then be honest with yourself. Are you seeking attention, approval, acceptance from them? That is one way to get it, for sure. Fourth is relational lethargy. You know, it takes a lifetime to truly know the mysteries of your partner. Some marital researchers suggest that it can take more than 30 years of marriage to even reach our sexual potential. The deeper waters of a person's soul can and usually does take a lifetime to discover. And there are a lot of reasons for that. The second law of thermodynamics states, you can never get as much out of a system as you put into it. Marriages have seasons where it feels like you're putting far more in than you're getting out. And relational lethargy can allow you to justify your actions due to the lack of return from your marriage, convincing yourself your partner deceived you and that they failed to live up to the expectations. You'll begin to curtail your investment in the marriage and enjoy seemingly effortless infatuation that comes from the beginning stages of an emotional affair partner and all that they bring to your life. And the fifth sign of an emotional affair is objectification. Sustaining the denial necessary to justify an emotional affair requires a fair amount of objectification. It's necessary to see only the negative aspects of your spouse if you have any hope of pushing away the guilt that might come from the betrayal. If you want to keep the emotional affair going when your spouse raises concerns about your friend, don't listen. Instead, tell them that they're being petty and they're controlling and that they're overreacting. Objectification of the affair partner is also necessary to sustain the emotional affair. Much of the benefit gained from the emotional affair is derived from seeing the other person as needing help, or someone who is intelligent, or more talented, or more beautiful, or more handsome. We imagine them being our counterpart, someone who gets me, who likes me, who's interested in me. Why would you want to have an emotional affair with someone who's, just average? Magnifying what you most admire in the other person and minimizing their deficits will help you feel better about your decision to continue the emotional affair. And sixth is minimization. If people really understood the long-term cost of their actions, would they really be able to continue? The awareness would only serve as an anxiety generator. To have an emotional affair, you minimize the impact of your actions and act surprised when your mate gets upset. And if you really want to minimize, never consider the impact on your children. After all, they're resilient, and over time, they'll come to forgive you and move on. Those are just some of the common ways that I've heard minimization over the years. And number 7 is self-deception. Deceiving yourself into believing that you're as wonderful as your emotional affair partner sees you is necessary to obtain the maximum benefit from your newfound relationship. Always believe the lie that you're better than their spouse and that you'd be far better off if you had married them. Marriage partners are like a makeup mirror to our lives. They highlight every flaw and every blemish, whereas emotional affair partners are like vanity mirrors. We look amazing in their eyes. Self-deception requires that we suspend reality and imagine ourselves as seen through our affair partner's eyes. And at the same time, they're doing the same. And number 8 is be an emotional confidant. To have an emotional affair, it's imperative that you begin providing emotional intimacy that their partner doesn't. You also need to look at them to be your primary source of support. Looking to them as your primary confidant will communicate their importance in your life and provide the same for them, will cause them to become dependent on you rather than looking to their spouse. You never miss an opportunity to probe how they feel and promise to be there if they need you. And number 9 is to develop common interest. Creating shared activity with your friend or your emotional affair partner provides something special that the two of you can have in common. Activities like bike riding and running and working out are great activities that allow legitimate, sometimes seemingly legitimate excuse to spend time together. And having something unique to your friendship allows for this feeling of exclusivity. Emotional infidelity is absolutely no less damaging than physical intimacy or a physical affair. In fact, most of the people that I think I've worked with over the years, they report it's the emotional aspects that are the hardest parts of them, that are the hardest parts for them to get over. I also want to acknowledge that navigating the aspects of emotional connection with others outside of the marriage can be like wading through muddy water and require careful and thoughtful conversations. I do this every day with couples, and many emotional affairs are filled with sexual tension. But you know what? Many are not. And I would just encourage you to have an open-hearted conversation with your spouse about what emotional infidelity means to each one of you and how you feel about it. And most importantly, listen generously to yourself and to your mate. If you are or have been involved in an emotional affair, I'd like to ask you to consider signing up for the Hope for Healing course. It'll help you address the root causes of your affair or addiction and acquire a few tools that can aid in the potential healing of your marriage. We have all been there ourselves at affair recovery, and we understand the pain that you're both facing. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to be another statistic. We want to be there to help you, to walk with you, to support and encourage you all along the way. And there's hundreds of people doing all of this at the same time that you're going to get a lot of support from.